Today, we're going to be talking about how to generate predictable revenue for your law firm. So this is, the business owner's dream is to have predictability in their business. So the goal of today's session is to give you a roadmap on generating consistency in your firm. Now, it's not going to be super tactical. This is going to be more of a high level. And what I want to do in this presentation is just get your mind going on your process, what you need to do to improve your process if you have one, or how to build a process from scratch. Because a lot of times, if you don't have a consistent flow of leads coming in, a process like this hasn't even been built because there hasn't been a need for one yet. So that is definitely something to consider. Hold on, I'm making sure I got feedback from someone over here. All right, good, it's working. So here's the agenda of today. So first, we're going to talk about the assembly line itself. Then we're going to talk about having consistent inputs in your firm. We're going to talk about how to create a consistent sales process, how to create a consistent follow-up process, and then how I like to measure the results of a system like this to make sure that A, it's producing for me, B, the system is not slipping in any way, and C, how to get consistent results like this throughout the future. All right, so first let's talk about an assembly line. This is just a simple concept, but you might not think of your firm as an assembly line. But when you think of an assembly line for a car, right, they start with a consistent set of parts. Those parts go through very exact steps until they have their output, which is the car itself. And ideally, the car is the same every single time. Otherwise, we'd have big problems on the roads, right? So the assembly line is really important because it's efficient, it's consistent, and it's very predictable, which is what we want in our sales process. So if you've never thought of your sales process as an assembly line, you want to start thinking of it that way, in that leads move through a system and then eventually they come out the other end as a client. And that's exactly what we want to build here today. So it all starts with consistent inputs, right? You have to have some sort of consistent leads so you have the makings of a reliable system. Consistent leads give you the ability to project and measure. So a lot of times how it works in a firm is you'll have a lead come from Google, you'll have a lead come from a referral, you'll have someone text you, you'll have a random person call your Facebook page, and you have all these inconsistent sources. And so you don't ever develop a reliable system for them. And it's hard to measure because you don't know where a lot of these leads are coming from because they're kind of spread out all over the place, right? It's referrals, it's web, it's Avo, it's super lawyers, it's all these different inputs. And as a result, you never get consistency out of your sales process. What we want is one consistent flow coming in so we can measure the effectiveness of that flow. And so you have to have a channel that produces for you consistently. This is the first step. And this could be a bunch of different channels, right? It could be Google ads, it could be local service ads, it could be purchase leads, it could be Facebook ads, it could be listings. The list goes on and on. But you want to have one channel that can produce enough leads for you to work. Ideally, it's just one in the beginning. That way you get better and better at working leads from that channel. If you start with 5 channels, it complicates the whole entire thing, and you haven't even developed a system yet. More on that in a few slides here. So once you have leads coming into your system, right, there needs to be a process in place to get the leads to a consult. Because initially, people are going to call in and people are going to fill out forms on your site or some sort of site to get in contact with you. And those need to be handled in a consistent way. Now, ideally, this is being automated because then you don't have to think about it, or at least there's some sort of SOP or standard operating procedure written down so people know exactly how to handle the leads. And so just 2 examples here is phone calls would go to a receptionist, and that receptionist would try and book them to a consult. Forms, so people filling out a form on your site, would be texted and called, and then that would be done by a receptionist. Ideally, that receptionist makes contact, and then that would be pushed to a consult. So it's 2 branches, but they feed into a consult. Now, every lead from this consult point gets handled the same way. So again, we're taking 2 separate types and feeding them into one flow. Super important because everything gets handled the same way after that branch point has been made. So now you have to have a consistent sales process. And I think that this is where a lot of people fall off. So each lead or prospect is ideally handled the same way each time. This is important because number one, we want to be able to measure this process. And so if it's a bunch of different processes, you can't measure it. And this way you get better and better at the pitch and the system becomes more and more reliable. And so you can have a different type of sales process depending on your personality or what you've had success with. You could do a phone call, you could do a Zoom call, or you can do an in-person consult/sales process. Now I have a picture of me here. So for those of you that don't know, I do jujitsu and I'm actually a black belt. And when you first start in jujitsu, you're usually horrible at it. Like there's no way you can be good at jujitsu if you've never done it. And so you realize how bad you are at fighting in general. That's a story for a different day. But what happens is as you practice and as you rep it, you get better and better and better. And this process takes a very, very long time. And the sales process is exactly the same way. If you started doing sales and you're starting on a phone call or you're starting on a Zoom call or you're starting in person, you're not going to be good at it when you start. And if you've never done it in a reliable system this way, and you're starting a new system, you're going to be bad at it at first. It's going to take time. It's going to take reps. And eventually you will get to a level where you've done it so many times that you get better and better and better at it to where you could do it in your sleep. So for example, whenever leads come into our business, right, I handle the leads. They go through my automated process to book on my calendar. Once they get on my calendar, I do a Zoom call. I really, really try to avoid doing sales over the phone because they don't get visual aids. And I like to have a face-to-face interaction because I prefer in person, but face-to-face is at least the next best thing. So I push all of my leads to a Zoom call. That way my system is reliable. I don't like to do phone calls or email pitches or in-person pitches, right? I like to keep it to one simple system. So A, I get better and better at it. And B, I have a reliable process. And for me personally, I've done my sales pitch probably close to 1,000 times at this point. And so I can literally do it without even looking at my slides. I can just ramble it off because I've done it so many times. And as a result, it's very consistent. So I don't even try and get creative anymore in my sales process. I literally just say, let me run you through my presentation and it'll answer all your questions. Boom, that's it. And it could be the same way for you. You want to push all your leads and consults into a single process. That way it's reliable. All right. So from there, once you've completed your sales pitch or your presentation or your consultation, you want to have consistent follow-up in place. And this is something that can definitely be automated. And you want to have an established cadence. So it's not just random every time, like, oh, hey, I remember that guy, let me follow up with him. Or, hey, I remember this guy, let me follow up with him. Now, especially in B2C, it's much easier to do this in an automated fashion. In B2B, you can take the reins a little bit and start to follow up on your own, make it more personalized. But B2C, you have so many leads coming in that it's much easier to do this. And so an example of what this cadence can look like is they do their consult and you wait 1 day. Then you follow up with a call and a text message. Then you wait 2 days, a call and a text message. You wait another 2 days, a call and a text message. And then at some point, you don't want to do this forever. You have a breakup, right? And there's actually it's actually a term like the sales word. You do like a breakup email or a breakup text message, or even a breakup voicemail if they're not answering your calls. And what that means is you tell them over text or over phone call, hey, it looks like you don't need help anymore. This is going to be my last message to you. So if you ever need help, you know where to find us. And this is usually the message that gets the most interactions because at this point, they're like, oh, no, wait, come back. So it's a really effective way to do it. And it's also a line in the sand for you to never, just do this in perpetuity. So it's helpful in that way. And again, this cadence and stuff is usually what we use for our clients. It's a couple days, message, couple days, message, couple days, message, and then the breakup. All right. That way we're not being too invasive with our messaging. So make sure that this process has an established cadence and it's predictable and it's reliable. So a lot of times what will happen is, people get really excited with generating leads and they think that they need 100 lead sources. To start, it's better if you actually have one lead source pushed into one sales process that generates you new clients. And the reason is number one, you have to learn that lead source. Leads will be different from different lead sources and expectations will be different. And you have to get used to one lead source. If you have a bunch of noise coming in, it's a little chaotic and you don't get as good at your sales process. So from $0 to $1 million a year in revenue, you can usually get away with one lead source, one sales process. And it actually can take you much further than that, but that's just kind of like a rule of thumb. And so for instance, in our business, right, from our 0 to 1 million story, our one lead source was Facebook. So we had Facebook leads coming in. They would go and book on my calendar. I would do a Zoom call with them and I would close a certain percentage of those people. And I've been doing that now for many, many years. So I know that the process is honed. I have exact metrics on my process and it works very, very well. Now, when you're looking to expand, once that sales process is dialed in and you have metrics on it, it's now easy to compare other lead sources to your one lead source because you have a system. So what this could look like if you're going from 1 million, 10 million, let's say, you can start adding lead sources. You can have lead source 1, lead source 2, lead source 3, lead source 4, and they're all going to feed into the same sales process that you have metrics on. And now you can measure which lead sources are producing the best results for you at what target cost per acquisition, what's the conversion rate, what's the efficiency, what's the ROI. because you had that original system to compare it to. Now, some lead sources may be better than your original, but again, that's an exciting thing to find out. But there's no way to know which lead sources are doing what if you don't have one consistent process and at least one benchmark. So again, this is really, really important when you're looking to A, start your firm and get a system off the ground, and B, scale that system. So now that we have the system in place, right, we need to measure the results. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what a scorecard could look like for you. And then I'm actually going to mind map this process for you if I were building this system myself for a law firm. So I'm going to navigate out of here. And this is what a snapshot would look like or a scorecard would look like if I was managing this process for a law firm. So let's say that I'm a CMO for a law firm and I came in, these are the numbers that I'm going to measure, and this is the system that I'm going to measure. And so all this is what we call a scorecard. And this is something that we do every single week in our company, and that I recommend that you do in yours, is to gather your main metrics. So what you want is the consistent leads, right? And so let's just say that we're getting 10 leads a week. Out of those 10 leads, we're getting 8 appointments. Out of those 8 appointments, let's say 6 people are attending them. And then out of that, let's say 3 people are closing, right? Now we have our metrics. So in our first week, we have an 80% booking rate, a 75% show rate, and a 50% close rate. We're doing great. These are great metrics. All right. If you're doing these kinds of numbers, you're doing very, very well for yourself. Now in week 2, let's just say that we get 12 leads, right? Pretty close. We get 9 appointments, we get 6 to show, and we get another 3 clients. All right. So we're doing great. We're happy. Let me turn these into percentages just so we can see. And so things are going good, right? We're starting to build a system. We're starting to get reliable results. And the same thing happens. We get 11 leads, we get 9 appointments, we get 6 to show, and we get 3 clients. We're fat and happy at this point. Now our system is looking good. Now, what'll happen sometimes is this will be trudging along and you're doing great and you've had a solid 3 weeks in a row. The system is now providing you baseline metrics. So when you go to another lead source, you can compare it directly to this one. But the other thing and the other valuable reason to do this every single week is you will have drop-offs. Problems will happen. So for instance, this could look like this one week. Oops, sorry. That was 3 and we got 0. And so now at this point, you're like, okay, what the heck happened, right? We just had a bad week. So at least it's tracked and we have something to compare it to, because a lot of times what'll happen is you either think you're having a bad week and you're really not, or you're having a bad week and you don't realize it and the problem gets out of hand before you can fix it. So now at this point, you're on high alert. Okay, what happened this week? Maybe it was a holiday, or maybe it was Christmas, or maybe it was something crazy. But if none of those things have happened and your system all of a sudden is failing in a week, it's time to go and start observing. Are we missing phone calls? Are we not booking appointments on the calendar? Where is the drop off? And so you can see in this system, the leads was the drop off point. We went from having 10 or 12 leads to having 5. So what happened in our marketing that went so badly? That would be your first clue. And now you have a thing to isolate and fix. If our show rate was bad, we'd have something to isolate and fix. If our closing rate was bad, did we stick to our same presentation over and over and over again? And so this is what gives you the ability to A, have predictability, and B, fix problems when they do arise, because problems will arise. Now, what I would like to see in the following week is the results turn back to the same they were. That way we're back on track with our system, and maybe it was just a fluke. But if that starts happening a couple of weeks in a row, you have a problem, and now you know you have a problem because you had consistency to start with. So that is the power of having a scorecard and having a consistent system, is you're able to know when things are going wrong. If you're randomly closing people on the phone and over text message, over email, you'll never be able to measure these types of results. All right. So having a scorecard is super, super valuable. We do it every single week, and I highly recommend you do the same thing. Now, just to take this a step further, if you were starting fresh and you were trying to build your predictable revenue system, and you wanted to map this process out, there's something that I like to use a lot. It's called Mind Manager here, and it's just a mapping software to help you get all your thoughts out on paper, and then you can work from this paper. And I use this to evaluate lead sources or projects or different flows. And so I'll run you through this really quick. This is a really basic version of it, just to show you what this could look like when you're mapping a project out. So first things first is we need consistent inputs. And so this is going to be our lead source, right? Now, if I'm evaluating lead sources, I'm putting my marketing director hat on and I'm working at a small law firm, right? And the owner tells me, hey, we need consistent leads. Go find us a lead source. So I'm going to start evaluating lead sources. And the first one I'm going to evaluate is going to be Google Ads, okay? The second one I'm going to evaluate is going to be local service ads. That's another form of Google Ads. Then I'm going to consider Facebook, right? Because everybody talks about Facebook. And then I'm also going to consider purchase leads. Now, if I was evaluating this as an owner or a CMO, I would want to know, what is the cost? And so this can cost you around $2,000. All right, this can cost you around $1,000. This can cost you again around $1,000. And I'm just making up numbers here. And purchase leads, highly transactional, can cost you around $1,000. Now, if you really wanted to break this down further, and this is what I actually do, I'm not going to do it here because I don't want to waste a ton of your time, is I would put in expectations. So how many clients do I think I can get out of it? What's my potential ROI? What's my lead time? What is my ease to launching? All of those different things, because it's going to help you evaluate it, and it's all on one piece of paper. And so usually when you map stuff out like this, it becomes very clear as to which action you should take. So things like for Google Ads, right? You have to hire an agency. Local service ads, you could do it yourself, so a little bit lower barrier. You don't have as much control, so that could be a con. Facebook ads, usually top of funnel for this. Maybe a lot of tire kickers or people not qualified, just kind of shopping around. Purchase leads, very transactional, very quick. You're going to get leads today, maybe. So those are all the things that you'd want to evaluate when you're doing a consistent input strategy. So that would be how I'd evaluate it. Now, the lead working process itself, right? This is going to be split into 3 different categories. You're going to get phone calls, you're going to get form submissions, and you're going to get leads that you're not contacted. So some of those phone calls may hang up. There's still going to be a lead. You should call them back, or they may be talking and they get cut off, right? They're going to go in the non-contacted bucket. Form submissions need to be handled a different way. And then the not contacted needs to have a process for getting those people back into your ecosystem. So for phone calls, what we're going to do when we get a phone call is it's going to go to a receptionist or a receptionist company. And again, you can evaluate both of those. From there, we're going to try and book a consult. And then from there, that consult is going to be a Zoom meeting, and they're going to get a calendar link. Now, form submissions need to be handled a little differently, right? Because this is not them reaching out to you. So first of all, when a form submission comes in through your website, is it being sent to somebody? So we need this to be sent to receptionists. And now the receptionist is the owner of this lead. After it goes to the receptionist, they can call or text this lead, right? You get 2 touches. They get a text message and they get a call, or they get a call. If they don't answer, they get a text message. That's something you can decide for yourself. From there, once you make contact, we're assuming that we're making contact here. They're going to go through the same process. They're going to book a consult. Sorry, I'm typing this fast. Consult. And then they're going to get a Zoom meeting with calendar link. And now for the leads that are not contacted, right? What are we going to do with all these people? So if the people who didn't answer our form submission, what do we do with them? We're going to put them into an automated workflow that will send them a series of emails and text messages throughout the course of a week or 2 weeks or however long you want to do that for. And then we're also going to phone call, or we're going to call them occasionally. And ideally, you're doing this on a certain cadence. So maybe every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you do your phone calls. Everyone who's in the not contacted list in your firm, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you call them, you measure how many times you called them. And then at some point you decide, okay, I'm done calling these people, maybe after 10 attempts. Okay, that's just an example. So this is how you build your lead working process. Now that we've got them to a consult, we need to build our sales process. And this needs to be consistent. So you have options here. We could do a Zoom consult. We could do in person, and we could do over the phone. And then from here, you would map this process out. So what does a Zoom consult look like? Are you going to have a presentation? Are you going to have a whiteboard? How long is it going to be? Map it out, see what it's going to cost you if you're doing it for free. So it's taking 15 minutes of your time, all that stuff. If it's in person, where are they going to meet? How's the process going to go? Are you going to have donuts there? Map it out. Over the phone, what are you going to say? Do you have a script? So ideally, you're only doing one of these, but if you are doing all of them, you're just going to dilute your data more. So I would personally push to one of these, whatever you're the strongest at. If you're really great in person, I would do that. If you're really good over the phone, do it over the phone. Personally, I like Zoom calls because we're national and, I'm able to see people pretty much face to face. And so I have a very reliable Zoom process. And now the follow-up process, right? So once they've attended our consult, what do we do with them? So after one day, we are going to call and text. We're going to wait 2 days, and we're going to call and text, and so on and so forth. And I would build this out. And then each one of these branches would grow and grow and grow until you have a really, really big mind map here to where you have extremely actionable things. So after this mind mapping process, what you would do is you would evaluate each one of these and you would decide on one. All right, so I'm going to go with Google Ads. It's going to cost me around $2,000. My expectations are X, Y, and Z. And then you're going to measure your system against those expectations. Now, my lead working process. I need to have a process for answering calls. I need to have a process for working form submissions. And I need to have a process for people who are not contacted. So you may need to hire a receptionist company. You may need to have a CRM in place. You may need to get some infrastructure in place to handle that type of process. Your sales process, if you have Zoom, great. If you're doing it over the phone, even easier. If you're doing it in person, you need to have a process for sending them reminders and sending them directions to your firm so they don't forget where you are. All right, this is how you map this stuff out so it's all bulletproof. From there, you need to have a follow-up process. So this person needs to then be followed up with every day or a couple of days. So you could see that it's easy to say, let's create a process or a sales process. But when you map out each step like this, it takes a lot of time. And this is just your first iteration of your sales process, your sales system. Over time, you're going to get better and better at this, and you're going to start to tweak little things. So again, I'll just run you through what my sales process looks like so you have an idea. What happens is a lead will come in off my landing page. There is no option for them to call in on my landing page. I want the lead to be handled the same way every single time. Once they fill out the form on my landing page, they're directed to my calendar. If they book on my calendar, then they get a series of reminders to show up to my Zoom call. If they don't book on my calendar, they go through an email series and text series until they get on my calendar. And if they don't get on my calendar, I stop following up with them after about 6 or 7 times. From there, once they hit my calendar, they attend their meeting or they don't attend my meeting. If they don't attend, they get followed up with. If they attend, they get followed up with a different set of messages until either they close or I break up with them. So that is what my process looks like. And again, that has been built over several years, but that is what you want to think about when you're building your process. So I hope this was helpful for you. If you guys have questions about this or you want to go deeper on some of this stuff, leave some comments in the Facebook group or on the YouTube video that I'll post of this exact webinar, and I can break this out further and in more detail and on a more tactical basis. So how am I automating my messages, or how am I sending my emails, or all of those different things. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was valuable for you, and I'll see you guys on the next one.